Hello and welcome to FU Cancer at Mike's Journey. This is episode number 11. In the last episode, we talked about the very basic functions of white blood cells, the 5 white blood cell lines, and we talked about cytotoxicity. So just to review, cytotoxicity is when the B cells are out doing the scanning and they're doing all the monitoring. They find an infected cell. The B cells that notify the T cells, which is the army, the specialized forces. T cells, along with helper cells, they latch onto the infected cells and inject the damaged cell or the sick cell with a poison that kills the cell. That's the very basic function of the immune system, and that's the immune system under normal conditions. For my conditions, it's not quite normal. There's other things into play, and I want to get into that in more detail later on. But before I go there, I have to go back a bit and discuss the other side of the coin, and that is, how did these cells get to that way in the first place? How did they become infected, and what's involved with that? So, if you remember back, I showed you the differences. There's 5 basic differences between a cancer cell and a non-cancer cell, and one of them was the feeding habits. Well, we talked about that. The other one was the sugar consumption. We talked about that. The other difference is that cancer cells don't care if they're mature or not before they split and divide, where a normal cell has to be fully matured, spends 80% of its time just doing its normal function, and then 20% of its time dividing, so it's splitting off into a new cell. The other thing is that normal cells have proteins in them that tell them to stick together, that this is where you belong, so they're in a very organized pattern, whereas cancer cells are in a very scattered pattern. They don't care. They grow on top of each other, create tumors. So why is that? So in a normal cell, if the cell itself is getting older, if there's damage within the cell, it goes through a process called apoptosis, and that's what I want to talk about today. So apoptosis, by definition, means programmed cell destruction. So here I've got a picture of a healthy cell here. It's nice and round. It's got a nice round clear nucleus, DNA, RNA, full of little proteins and gases. This whole area inside here is the mitochondria, it's called. Now, if there's an issue with anything in this cell, whether it's the DNA parts are missing, the cell could actually be getting old. And what happens is there's a protein, it's called P53. This protein gets activated and actually leads the cell to self-destruct and commit suicide. Now, that's what happens in a normal cell. So in a cancer cell, here I've drawn a beautiful picture of a cancer cell. You'll see the nucleus, like I said in an earlier episode, the nucleus is quite a bit larger in a cancer cell or disease cell, and outside the nice round shape of a normal cell is gone. It's got this weird oblong, different distinct shape. Now, if you could look into this cell and you could look into the mitochondria, you'd find the DNA and the RNA strands. You'd find a lot of other things in there. You'd find the proteins, the gases, the acids, and lots of other things, but in part you'd find the DNA. So again, if you could put a microscope into looking at the DNA, you would actually find that the pieces of the strands of linking the two ladders, so that the DNA is a bipolar helix ladder with rungs in it, and the RNA is a half a ladder, like one side of it. But you'd be able to see that there's fractions in this DNA. There's pieces missing, there's little gaps in between, there's there's damage there. And that's critical because, again, in a normal cell, if you had any damage in the DNA, or if there's anything going wrong with the RNA, the P52 protein would activate and it would self-destruct. But here, obviously, it doesn't matter because the communication could be lost. It could be that this cell now doesn't think it needs to be bound to the cell beside it, so we can just float freely, which is how you can end up with cancer, colon cancer, in your bone, because the communication devices out of this cell have gone haywire, and the self-destruction mechanism has ignored it for one reason or other. And there's more than one reason that could happen, and we'll get there. But the communication's gone. It says, well, I'm just going to live on anyways. And if you remember back, I said, well, the cancer cells, I don't care if they're fully developed or not. So you get these DNA strands that are half developed, they're half mature. They really don't know what their life purpose is or what they're supposed to control. So things get out of control. And that's pretty much how cancer cells differ from normal cells. And the apoptosis, it doesn't activate in a cancer cell when it gets out of control. So my question needs to be, well, what can I do about that? What can I do to protect the mitochondria? That's what I want to protect. I want to protect this mitochondria, all this stuff around the nucleus, from going bad in further cells. I can't control the ones that are damaged beyond repair. I can repair some of the cells that aren't fully damaged, and if I can activate my immune system to identify those damaged cells, then I can destroy them that way. So again, it's the same bottom line, the same attack on a specific cell, just doing it in several different ways. The immune system, the P53 protein activation, and in the meantime protecting the mitochondria. So I'll just stop there and say, for as far as protecting and enhancing healthy growth for mitochondria and getting the proper omega-3 fatty acids into the DNA, which is what's required for DNA. That's a necessity at the barest minimum. I mentioned the other day I take CoQ10. Well, CoQ10 is good for the immune system. It also is a protector in the mitochondria cell restoration. So, and that's why it's used for a lot of people that have heart conditions or heart stents put in. They get CoQ10 because it actually rebuilds the cells around that have been damaged. But it doesn't stop at the heart. It does the same thing through the rest of your body. So that's one thing. And just as I was doing my first filming of this, the doorbell rang, and I have this other product. This is called Restore. Now on the bottle here it says it's for balanced gut health, support respiratory wellness, combat environmental exposures, promotes immune function, and enhance mental clarity. Again, this is something that I get online, and I'm not promoting the product, but I am telling you that what this particular product does is it's kind of a fertilizer for the bacteria in your body to grow, to counterbalance acid. And it's a neutralizing agent. And we talked about pH balance the other day. The other thing about this Restore is that through that process, to make a long story short, through that process, it actually spins off and has a protection built-in boundary for cells, and not cells for your gut, it's cells for your whole body, in turn help the immune system act more efficiently. So that's another product that I use. And again, the most basic product, because there's not really, and I may be wrong, but from what I've seen and what I've asked about, there's not really a product on the market for specific cell regeneration and regrowth, especially with cancer cells, because it's hard to identify the specific problems with the cancer cell, because like I said, there's 317 DNA strand ladders and you don't know which one is damaged and how much, so every single cell is different. So you're looking for a different cure for every single cancer cell. Unlike in a normal healthy cell, the cells are generic, they're the exact duplicate of each other. That's not the case, so it's a little different approach. I've never found a specific medicine or, you know, prescription type medicine, and I've asked, and I don't think there is such a thing, to go after a specific cell. There's chemotherapy, which is different, it goes after all cells, but the other key to healthy cell health is, again, it's your diet. So it's eating the leafy greens, and I mean, if you look it up, it's the same thing. You come back to the same thing every time, and that's the omega-3 fatty acids, the leafy greens, the actually red meats are a great source of omega-3s. It all comes back to, it really comes back to the keto diet plus some carrots and all the vegetables. But it's pretty amazing really how no matter how much I research, the common denominator keeps coming back to the same few basic things in life, and that's food, water, and nutrition. And that's my spiel for today. So again, in the next episode, we'll be able to get a little deeper into what is actually going on with these crazy cancer cells. Have a good day.